Welcome, everybody, to yet another episode of the SCHIFF Show. I'm Brian Schiff. I've been flight instructing for 41 years, and on the side, I play airline captain. I've been doing that for about 38 years to help support my GA habits. I'm at the phase where I'm trying to give back to the industry before I forget it all, so I'm hosting this show we call the SCHIFF Show, and welcome to the 16th episode. I can't believe as I say that it is actually the 16th episode. It's been a lot of fun, and time flies. Tonight we'll be discussing non-towered or uncontrolled airport operations. But before we get started, just a couple of cleanup items that stay tuned till the end of the episode and test your aviation knowledge in our game show, the top scorers of which will win some fun prizes. We change every month. Also, each episode of the SCHIFF Show can be used to complete a flight review, and also complete a phase of wings, either the basic, advanced, and master. This episode is available to do that. Many of them are, and eventually we'll have all episodes available for this, and you'll see that in the main page, and I'll have some directions on that shortly. But again, most of them are now, many will be eventually, all of them will be eventually available. So you can complete a phase of wings, which counts as a flight review. Now, to do this, you need to complete 3 knowledge credits and 3 flight credits. So you say, how does the SCHIFF Show give me 3 knowledge credits? Well, there are 3 quizzes, one for the part you're watching right now, and then another quiz for the 2 more quizzes for the course resources, which are attached to the main page, listed in the course resources page of this website of this program. Beginning with next month, we're probably going to make the episode a little bit longer. I'm going to commit to maybe going and calling it a 90-minute episode. I feel like I have a lot of topic and information to give on each topic, and 90 minutes would make it a lot more comfortable pace. If you can't stay up that late, I understand that might conflict with many of you on the East Coast. But again, they are recorded, and I apologize for that, but I feel like I'll be able to get it done without feeling rushed. The other advantage to that is that being 90 minutes, the episode itself will be worth 1.5 wings credits, and then one more quiz will make it another 1.5 wings credits for a total of just 2 quizzes instead of 3. On the episode main page, just click on the Earn Wings Credit / Flight Review button, and then on the link to access a copy, click on the link to access a copy of the SCHIFF Show activity for a flight review and phase of wings. You'll see a task list. Just take 3 knowledge quizzes, 1 based on the presentation that you're going to watch, and 2 based on the course materials. Fly with a flight instructor who will teach the 3 recommended maneuvers that are associated with the topic of this episode or the episode you're watching. And then have the CFI endorse your logbook and follow the CFI instructions on this sheet. It's really easy for the instructor to just follow the instructions and click onto the links, and it'll take you to where you need to be on the FAASafety.gov website. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for getting all of that done without having to navigate the FAA Safety Team website. When you finish that, you'll receive a certificate for each, one for the flight review, 1 for completing the phase of wings. Of course, you get a lot of accident forgiveness or FAR violation forgiveness with the FAA. And this is a good way to do continuing education like the airlines do and make you a safer pilot. And Avemco will also offer a discount for that as well, which very thankful to them for sponsoring this show and making it possible. And remember, whenever you see this symbol in the top right corner of the slide, you can get more information on the topic on that slide or whatever I'm talking about in the course resources page of the SCHIFF Show website. Today, I'm especially proud to introduce a very special guest, my father. He's been on the program before, but this program bears his name as well, and for good reason. He's not only been a lifelong mentor and inspiration to me, but also to countless aviators worldwide. And he's set an example and a very high standard for me to follow. This year, he was honored with one of aviation's highest distinctions, the 2026 Bob Hoover Award, recognizing his lifelong contributions to excellence, innovation, and mentorship in our field. So please join me tonight in welcoming my dad, the founding aviation SCHIFF, to the SCHIFF Show.
Hi, Dad.
How are you?
You're embarrassing me.
Well, I don't know how many times you've embarrassed me, so we have a lot of getting even to do. Since my first solo and dating girls, all of that through life, it's there have been a lot of embarrassing moments. So I'm
We
happy
don't
to
have
say
to talk about dating girls, do we?
no, we won't do that. Anyway, congratulations on that reward. I mean,
Thank you.
as a son, I couldn't be prouder of my own dad. I think it's really fantastic. And again, you're setting really difficult footsteps for me to follow in, but I think even to fall short, even far short, is still to do pretty well.
I have no doubt you'll be right there.
All right. Well, without more ado, we'll get into tonight's episode. Again, every episode has these 5 segments: accident review. We'll talk about an accident. Then we'll look at the procedures, techniques, and technology that can be used to help you avoid this kind of an accident. Sometimes one of those sections might be longer than on other episodes, but it kind of depends on the topic. But remember, as always, we'll play a game at the end to test your aviation knowledge and trivia. And remember, you need to be watching and caught up to real time to participate. So if you're familiar with the instructions of the game, you can just hit go to live. I think there's a button on the live broadcast that takes you directly to live programming. So if you started this late, you're actually a few minutes behind, or however minutes late you started it. That's how far behind you are. But you want to be in real time. We started the program at 7 p.m. Central Time, so pretty close to 8 p.m. Central Time, we'll be getting to this quiz. And if you're pretty far behind, you won't be able to play it live. If you don't want to play live, then you can just watch it and it'll still work just as fine. But getting with it, we'll start with the accident review. Tonight, we're going to look at a collision between the landing Beech 19 and a departing King Air A90 at the Quincy Airport in Quincy, Illinois. It occurred in November of 1996 around 5 p.m. local time. It was right after sunset that time of year. Both aircraft were destroyed, and the occupants of both aircraft, 14 in total, were fatally injured. Very sad accident, and senseless, actually. Quincy, Illinois is located right there in the Midwest. It's southwest Illinois, just near the northeast corner of Missouri. I've been there several times, and it does have crossing runways. It's a non-towered airport with Class E Echo airspace down to the ground. The Beech 1900 was call sign Lakes Air 251, was landing on runway 13. The Beech King Air A90 was November 1127 Delta, was taking off on runway 4. A Cherokee, November 7646 Juliet. And I say the numbers because you'll hear them. You're going to hear some of the audio coming up. You'll also see a portion of a video from one of those disaster TV shows that aired an explanation of this accident. And there's a link to that in our course resources as well. But the Cherokee was holding short of runway 4, number 2 for takeoff behind the King Air. The flight crew of Lakes Air 251 made appropriate efforts to coordinate the approach and landing through radio communications, but they mistook a Cherokee pilot's transmission, the pilot in the Cherokee, that he was holding for departure on runway 4 as a response from the King Air, because they heard the King Air taxi into position and hold, is how they said it then, and now we say line up and wait. But they knew the King Air took the runway. They asked, are you going to take off or wait? And they heard the Cherokee say that he's holding for takeoff. A little bit of a miscommunication. The King Air pilot's failure to announce his intention to take off over the CTAF, the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, created the potential for a collision between the two airplanes, and that potential turned real, actually. So here's the video, just an excerpt from the program right here.
The commuter plane is now 90 seconds to touchdown. The King Air is in position and holding.
Fuel check. Okay. Navigation set. And radar set for takeoff.
The aircraft going to hold in position on runway 4, or you guys going to take off?
7646 Juliet, holding for departure on runway 4, 900, King Air.
Okay, we'll get through your intersection in just a second, sir. We appreciate that. Finals are complete.
So that kind of brought up a couple questions to me. And why would you line up and wait at a non-towered airport? Why would you take the runway before you intend to take off? I don't know. Dad, do you give any advice on that? Would you take the runway and give duel on the runway?
No, I think that at a non-towered airport, you shouldn't take the runway until you're ready to go.
Yeah, I agree. And in this case, the instructor was giving dual to a student in the King Air, and they lined up on the runway, and more flight instruction was happening in the King Air, in the aircraft, looking down, explanations were happening, and it was a big distraction to the traffic situation going on, because I think they weren't paying attention. Otherwise, they would have known everything going on and heard it. And obviously, why didn't they announce that they were taking off? And I think that was one of the biggest problems. Were they even listening to the CTAF? I know that some radios and radios become more and more sophisticated. You might be transmitting and think you're listening and hear absolutely nothing. I know one technique, I think you taught me this, Dad, is to, maybe if not you, someone somewhere along the way taught me to call and get a radio check on the frequency. And if somebody's listening, just to make sure that you are actually hearing something, because the absence of anything might indicate that your volume is down, or your speaker's not, your audio is not turned on, or your audio control panel can be turned off. So another thing that GA pilots aren't really taught, but I think is a great technique, is to use a stereo cockpit, like we do at the airlines on the runway. And flight instructors teach this. Anytime you're on an active runway, stereo cockpit, all communication should be for just the safety of that particular flight. And again, I wouldn't recommend lining up and waiting until you're ready to take off. In fact, just take the runway when you're ready to take off. I know there's an exception. Like, would you take the runway if someone had just landed and you're going to take off right behind them? Maybe. Yeah, it depends. There's always different situations. In any event, the King Air subsequently began its takeoff roll without saying a word on the CTAF and collided with the airliner at the intersection of the two runways. Very unfortunate. The entire transcripts of this, if you'd like to read them, are also in the course materials, and you can kind of see the whole dialogue and get it in context. If you'd like to take a look at that, that's available. Both aircraft were destroyed by post-impact fire, and sadly, like I said, the occupants of both aircraft perished in the post-crash fire. 14 in all. There were 12 on the airliner, 10 passengers and 2 crew, and then the 2 pilots on the King Air. What's really sad is that they survived the impact, but succumbed to the post-crash fire, smoke and fire, which is really sad. The NTSB determined that the probable cause of this was the failure of the pilots in the King Air to effectively monitor the CTAF and to properly scan for traffic. I think both aircraft were there to be seen. Both aircraft could have seen the other one. Contributing to the accident was the Cherokee pilot's interrupted radio transmission. I think there was a call out from the, I don't think I know, radio altimeter from in the Beech 1900 yelled out 200 right in the middle of that transmission. So there was a little bit of confusion. If you go back and watch this again, you'll see and hear that, and you'll see in the transcript that happened as well. And it kind of happened at a bad time, which led to the misunderstanding of who was actually talking at that time. Anyway, the misunderstanding was that the Beech 1900 pilots thought that the King Air would not take off until after they had cleared their intersection, their runway. So contributing to the severity of the accident and the deaths and the loss of life was the lack of adequate aircraft fire rescue services available, and the failure of the air stair door on the Beech to be opened. If you watch the entire episode of that program, you'll see that there were people outside trying to get that door open, and it was jammed. And the people on board were, yelling out the windows and trying to get them to open. And it was a very sad, unfortunate situation. Not really pertinent to the topic of non-towered airports, but the emergency equipment that is now at a lot of airports is the aircraft rescue and firefighting piercing equipment, which if you take a look at this thing, it's a very sharp probe with the holes in it. And the reason for that is when there's a fire inside of an aircraft, well, I'll just let you watch this YouTube clip to see how it works. Here's a fire rescue at Philadelphia International Airport practicing with that piercing into a simulated fuselage. They know where to poke it. This is another reason. So they know where to go, right where the overhead bins are is where they go, right above the windows. And they're trained for that. Look at all that water that they can shoot through the cabin to put that fire out. So if you're another reason not to go get your bags as you're briefed on a crash landing, because that might happen. So to tonight's topic, looking at non-towered airports, is an airport without an operating control tower, or one whose tower is not operating. And for the student pilots here, private pilots working on their certificates, if you look at the chart, the magenta indicates a non-towered airport, and the blue symbol indicates a towered airport. The towered airports may not be open 24 hours, and the way to know that is by the asterisks next in the airport block that next to the tower. It indicates that the tower is not open. It's easy for me to say that the control tower is not open 24 hours. So when you see the asterisk in the information block, you don't know the exact hours. You just know they're not always open. So you need to go to the sectional pane or look at the chart supplement. On the pane of the sectional, you can see the hours of operation of that particular control tower. And when it's not in operation, then obviously the Class D airspace reverts usually to Class E. The chart supplement will tell you that. In any case, this airport is a non-towered or uncontrolled airport when the tower is closed. FAA Advisory Circular 90-66 comprehensively covers non-towered airport flight operations, and all pilots should be familiar with this. It's in the course resources. The FAA believes that observance of standard traffic pattern and the use of CTAF procedures, as they outline in this advisory circular, will improve safety, efficiency of the aeronautical operations at those airports without towers. And those best practices are in the document. It's in the course resources. There's even an extra quiz on that to get more wings credit to be familiar with it. But when you hear, like, some airports, there's so many different people doing so many different things, and it's kind of the Wild West at some of the non-towered airports. And the FAA doesn't regulate the traffic pattern entry. The only thing they do regulate is the traffic pattern flow. In other words, is it left turns or right turns? That part is, and you can see that on the chart as well to see what direction a standard pattern would be to the left. And if it's to the right, you'll see an RP on the sectional for right pattern and which runway. Inbound pilots are expected to observe other aircraft already in the pattern and to conform to the traffic pattern in use. If no other aircraft are present, the pilot should check the ground traffic indicators like the windsocks and tetrahedrons or whatever's available and determine which runway is best. So overfly the airport, above pattern altitude. Take a look at those ground indicators, see where the wind is coming from, and then you determine which pattern to use and then how to go enter that pattern, which I'll talk a little bit about shortly. Another thing is that aircraft on an instrument approach, flying the final approach course to land, would follow the requirements of the approach procedure. And the FAA also doesn't recommend straight-in approaches for landing when other aircraft are in the traffic pattern, and they say that it increases the risk of a mid-air collision. That's after a lot of review. Again, not illegal to do a straight-in approach. We'll talk a little bit more about that too. Dad, have you ever done a straight-in approach? You never do it, do you?
Many, many times. I like it. I know the FAA is opposed to it, but there's circumstances when I think it's not only better, but safer.
I would agree. Sometimes you have to do a lot of turning and maneuvering to get in and out of a pattern. And if you're going to be doing that, and it might even take you into a jump zone, which you can see in this image is on the far right. You got to watch out for that. But those jump zones do parachute jump zones take into account the airport traffic pattern and where it should be. But a lot of messing around, I think, and turning can at times add a degree of risk to a flight rather than just going straight in. So I think there's a time and a place for it. And we'll go over the poll results. We did a pre-show poll for some of these questions that we'll be looking at. The first one was making CTAF position reports. How do you describe your aircraft on the radio? Flying to different airports, I've heard different things. I've heard some people, all kinds of things actually. People say their N number, they'll say a call sign, they'll say blue and white Cessna. So we put this out there. This question was out there, and many of you answered. The first 100 answers, our result was pretty overwhelmingly aircraft call sign, including the N number, like saying Cessna 3 Alpha Bravo, rather than saying red and white Cessna. How do you do it, Dad?
I'm downwind.
I'm
No, it depends on what I'm flying. If I'm in an airplane that is readily and easily identifiable, I might specify that if it's something unusual. Otherwise, I broadcast as recommended by the FAA.
Yeah, the FAA does recommend that we do it this way. In fact, if we look at that we do it with our call sign and N number, the AIM says in paragraph 424 that civil aircraft pilots should state what if you're not civil? I'm not a civil pilot. I've been called sometimes a lot worse than civil.
It's my understanding that one of your viewers tonight is a Mustang pilot, a P-51 pilot, a well-known one at that. And I think if I were flying a P-51, that's what I would say. Mustang on the downwind leg. You're not going to mistake that for anything else.
Right. And I think a lot of people might get the impression of like, who makes the Mustang?
Who cares?
So would you say who cares? 1, 2, 3 Alpha Bravo is on a downwind?
No, I wouldn't say North American. I would just say P-51 Mustang.
Right. I think it does give the receiver of that information a lot of bit more information. I mean, people know what a Mustang is. You're right. And they know it's fast. If I'm flying my Citabria, many times I will say red and white Citabria because it's very apparent that way. I've heard people say, what good does it do to say an N number? Well, nowadays, if you're approaching the airport, in the pattern, I don't want people looking at their cockpit display of traffic information, but when you're approaching the airport, you can see N numbers on that display. But we're getting closer and closer to the airport. It's less and less of a time to be looking at that, and you'd be looking for an airplane and its description. Also, some airports have unique locations. And if you're going to a non-towered airport, it's not a normal one that you visit, and everybody there is saying that they're near the junkyard or approaching the whatever. You may not know where that is. So if you're going to one that you don't normally visit, I would try to go to that airport's website and review the areas that they say that are position reports for that airport. Otherwise, you may not know.
By the way, if someone were to report, for example, Piper 3824 Bravo, boy, that can be any kind of different airplanes. It can be anything ranging from a J3 Cub to a Navajo. You just don't know. So yeah. I think there are times when it's important to distinguish between the type of aircraft you're flying.
I agree. And if you're flying a Boeing 23 Bravo, that could be anything from a Stearman to a 747, right?
That's correct.
So, yeah.
I don't think you're going to find a 747 at too many non-towered airports, though.
Probably not, but maybe an airport with the tower closed. You never know. Yeah, I think the type is important at certain times, and I think it's just up to pilot judgment. And if you have any doubt, question the other pilot and work it out. Try to reconcile anything that you just don't know. But the FAA recommends it. It's not regulatory. It's in the AIM. But if something happens and you had a problem communicating and you didn't do it the way they recommended, you just never know what will happen. They recommend self-announcing, and they do specifically call this out and say that you should not use paint schemes or color descriptions to replace the use of aircraft call sign. I have mixed emotions on that, as we all do.
If someone says 4324 Bravo, tell me nothing, because I'll never be close enough to see that number. At least I hope I'm not.
I mean, why do you think they went so far as to put this specific call out in there? There's another one we'll look at too. There had to be a reason. And I don't know, maybe if you're a viewer and you worked for the FAA and you're familiar with this, or you were part of getting that in the AIM, maybe let us know right in, and we'll mention it in our post episode email. Also, when you're referring to a specific runway, pilots should use the runway number and not use the phrase active runway. That's a pet peeve along a lot of pilots who I queried for before we had this episode. I asked if they had any pet peeves, and that was one of them. Don't use the term active runway because you don't know what someone might consider the active runway. And the AIM actually says that. The pilot controller glossary defines it. It's the runway in use. It's the active runway, duty runway, any runway or runways currently being used for takeoff or landing. But I think it's more important to know which runway someone's on final rather than the active, and then have someone have to try to go figure out which one that is.
You mean an active runway is not one that's in motion?
Well, if that were the case, it would only be aircraft carriers, as far as I know. Otherwise, all the ones that you and I use are
Or
very
California earthquakes.
Oh yeah, that would be a very active runway. Yeah, if you see a crack going down the middle of it, go around. Another question that we use is, would you make a straight-in approach to a non-towered airport? And that's always fun, to just walk into a hangar full of pilots on a rainy day and just say, straight-in approaches at non-towered airports, discuss. And it's fun to see. And what was really interesting was the results of this could not be more divided, much like our country. It's like 50-50. It's would you make a straight-in approach? Half the pilots would, half would not.
You know what's really interesting about that is the FAA they discourage people from making straight-in approaches to non-towered airports. I understand why. However, there's an interesting statistic, and that is that the majority of mid-air collisions occur in the traffic pattern of non-towered airports on beautiful VFR days on Sunday afternoons. And if you look at those accidents, none of them happen to involve a straight-in approach.
That is interesting, and I think it gives you a good perspective of the pattern. If you get an idea, you know where the high-risk zone is where you're getting close to where the base legs might be. Otherwise, there's no one else really merging with you unless someone else is doing a straight-in without talking. I think the most important thing is to keep your eyes out the window and look for any traffic. There's the verbiage from the advisory circular on straight-in approaches or straight-in landings. I mean, if you're flying IFR, that's probably what you're going to do. A lot of instrument approaches come in straight. So the pilot might say on the radio, flying an instrument approach, it's a straight into runway 9. I'm 5 miles out. Don't use intersection names because VFR pilots won't really know where that is. Okay, so here's another one. If you use the phrase traffic in the area, please advise, are you using a phrase the FAA says should not be used under any condition? And most everybody got that right, which is great, but I still don't understand why the rule is what it is. So it looks like 78% of everybody, of the first 100 people who answered this, said, yeah, that would be something that the FAA says you should not use under any condition. I don't understand why, really. The AIM does, the advisory circular refers to the AIM. And if I were to listen to why, I tried to research this as to why this would be that they called this phrase out in the AIM. There are many things you probably shouldn't say, but they call this one out and say it's not a recognized self-announce and should not be used under any condition. I think that's strong language for something that is actually quite helpful.
Why don't you ask me if I know why they do that?
Do you know? I'm afraid to ask you a question that you tell me to ask you. But do you know why they do that?
No.
Okay. I don't either. In researching it, I've come up with some reasons I don't totally agree with, like frequency congestion, or a non-answer might mislead you to think that no one's in the area. Or I don't know. I'm not quite sure what the reason is. I think it's important, if you're going to take a check ride, that you know what the AIM says and that you apply common sense when you're actually going into a non-towered airport. They think it can also mask other transmissions, but any transmission can mask another one. Anyway, I'm not quite sure about that one either. But
we are talking about the FAA,
We are talking about the FAA, and they're here to help. So the pattern entries are where a lot of problems are that I see when I'm giving flight reviews. Non-towered airport patterns are always entered at pattern altitude. You should be at the pattern altitude when you enter it. How a pilot enter that pattern depends on the direction of arrival, the way you're arriving the airport. The preferred method is to come in on from a downwind side at a 45-degree angle to the downwind and join the pattern at midfield, a beam midfield. Most probable cause, most mid-airs, is if they call it failure to see and avoid, or two aircraft, that's as obvious as two aircraft trying to occupy the same space at the same time. We know the risk of high wing and low wing. If the low wing is descending on top of a high wing. They're less likely to see each other. But look all around, make clearing turns, move your head a lot, keep your eyes outside the window. I see a lot of pilots looking at their ADS-B and looking at their DG for the heading so they can fly a perfect downwind heading, no wind or whatever. If you're on that downwind, look for traffic coming in on the 45. If you're coming in on a 45, look for traffic on the downwind, and so forth. The image that we're showing here is from the Airplane Flying Handbook. And they say to cross over midfield at least 500 feet above the pattern altitude, normally 1,500 feet AGL, because most patterns are about 1,000 feet AGL. But everyone's different, so make sure you look at it. However, if large aircraft or turbine aircraft operate into that airport, it's best to be about 2,000 feet AGL or 1,000 feet above the pattern altitude, because the large aircraft and turbines use 1,500 feet as their pattern altitude. Typically, it's published. If it's not published, that's usually what it will be. So make sure you know the pattern altitude and come in 1,000 feet above it, or 500 feet above the highest known pattern altitude for that airport. A pilot on a 45-degree entry can continue to turn away from the downwind. If you see someone, there's an easier escape and fly away and then come back in on a 45 again. Another one that they recommend is this crossing the airport at midfield at pattern altitude and simply turning downwind. What do you think of that one? You never taught me to do that. That only recently came in as an acceptable way to enter the pattern. And I think if you're going into an airport with very little traffic, maybe, but you better keep your eyes peeled. Who merges onto a freeway at a 90-degree turn?
You know what would be interesting is on a beautiful Sunday afternoon is to chart all of the entries and whatnot that aircraft make. And I think it would be of such a wide variety that they wouldn't conform to any standard at all in most cases.
Well, I've done that
out there sometimes.
I've looked at, Flight Radar 24 or FlightAware and watched this happen. And I've learned that something that I experienced personally, and I'm about to talk about it, is happening very frequently. And that's one of the pattern entries that it's similar to this. And I think that this being not to scale, this turning entry to the 45-degree entry to the pattern, being not to scale in the Airplane Flying Handbook has led many people to misunderstand. So let's talk about some techniques, excuse me, of entering the pattern. First of all, it's your rule. I will use correct radio phraseology. So make that your mantra. Learn the right way to say things so that everybody knows what you're saying. If you say something incorrectly, others may not understand what you're trying to get at. So you want to enter a pattern on a 45-degree angle. Let's say we're landing runway 27 here. And I couldn't figure out how to get PowerPoint to go the other way. So that's why the pattern drew itself the wrong way. But you want to enter it at a 45-degree and enter the pattern, the downwind at a 45-degree angle, beam the midpoint of the airport. And the distance between the downwind and the runway kind of varies between the altitude of the downwind and the speed of the airplane. But generally speaking, they say a half mile to a mile. So a downwind leg could be up to a mile from the runway in faster airplanes or more. So you aim for the midpoint, the middle of the downwind leg for the approach. If you aim for the middle of the downwind leg, not the middle of the airport, this is something I've only recently, thanks to Jason Miller, changed the way that I teach and the way I look at it, because if you're coming in on 45, aiming for the middle of the runway, then you're actually kind of dangerously close to that crosswind turn of the aircraft, crosswind to downwind in the pattern. So you want to aim for the approach end of the runway you're landing on. Usually that brings you pretty close to midfield on the downwind where you actually turn downwind. I thought that's a good technique that I've started teaching recently, thanks to Jason. So the problem here is when you're coming from the non-traffic pattern side of the airport, let's say in this case you're coming from the north, and you want to enter left traffic, what do? Here's what I teach. I teach cross over the runway 1,000 feet above pattern altitude and get at least 2 miles from the downwind, so maybe 3 miles from the airport at least, And if you think about that, if you're flying 90 knots, that's like 6 minutes. Well, a mile and a half a minute, 3 minutes, right? Did I do that right? Well, I'm in the middle of talking. So let's just ask the pro. If you wanted to be 3 miles from runway at 90 knots, how long would you have to fly? 2 minutes. That's what I said. So if you think about when you do this, do you actually go out 2 minutes or more? You want to just get away from the airport and then turn in the direction that you intend to land, fly that way for a bit until you're and descend to pattern altitude, and then turn in on a 45 and just enter in on a 45. You're rolling out of your turn several times, which gives you the opportunity to look for traffic. You're getting to pattern altitude before you come in on a 45. And you enter this 45 and report left 45, runway 27, however many miles out, and then report entering a left downwind midfield runway 27.
You know,
So-
one thing I've noticed is when people make that overhead approach,
Yeah.
as you've diagrammed here, and they start heading, in this case, south of the airport, they seem to get impatient.
Yes.
And they don't want to go a full 2 minutes, for example, in this case. And they always seem to tend to turn a little soon. And I'm not quite sure why. That extra minute really bothers some people.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know why that tendency is there. I've even felt it myself. Like you feel counterproductive flying away from the airport. Also, one could argue you always want to be in gliding distance to the airport. So maybe subconsciously you don't want to get down low and not be able to glide to the field. That could be it. But I have noticed the same tendency, and such is the problem with some of the techniques being taught as a result of, I think, something in ForeFlight. The industry has coined an unofficial term, and that term is teardrop entry to the traffic pattern. The only place that I search every FAA document, actually I had AI do it, I couldn't do it myself, for the word teardrop. And the only place it appears in any FAA document, is other than on your face after busting a check ride, is in reference to IFR holding patterns. So this is not an IFR holding pattern entry, but when you go to ForeFlight and you go to the procedures advisor here and you want to select a traffic pattern entry, which is great for reference, we're landing runway 27 and we want to choose a midfield teardrop, a 45 entry on the best side. And it draws us this picture of sort of what I just taught, what I told you, cross overhead midfield, get away from the airport, turn around and come back in on a 45. However, what we're seeing pilots do is they're calling this a teardrop, and we get pilots saying, I'm on a right teardrop for left traffic. And a lot of us old schoolers or people who don't use ForeFlight are going to have no idea what that means. Like if they hear you say I'm on a right teardrop for left traffic, they're not going to know what you mean or where you are. And the other problem is that ForeFlight, even in this depiction here, is only taking you about 1.5 miles from the downwind that they've depicted here. A downwind could be further from the airport, up to 1 mile, arguably. So the problem happens when you start entering this or flying this pattern, and you shouldn't be using ForeFlight to navigate. But if you're flying this pattern, and I'm in the pattern in a fast King Air, I'm flying a big wide pattern, left-hand traffic, and you're making a right-hand traffic in the pattern, doing a teardrop, you're turning head on to the faster traffic that could be downwind, flying a wider downwind.
Brian, does that mean when you look at that ForeFlight display that you're supposed to fly to that scale? Or does it mean this is about what you do, but you should fly at elongated legs?
I think this is about, I think it's for situational awareness, gives you the pattern you should fly. I do not think it should be flown to scale that way. Obviously, that's what causes the problem. Also, the terminology. So one is the terminology, and two is that, yeah, you shouldn't fly this to scale. It might be dangerous to fly it to this scale to try to stay on that line. Most of the routing that you're flying, you're staying on the line until you get here, because this is just not realistic. I like the feature. I like that it gives you some situational awareness about where you should be and the route you should fly. I don't like that it paints it so tight like that, and I don't like pilots calling it a teardrop entry to a traffic pattern, because There's no such thing. So that's my opinion. Yours may vary, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of email on that. But there's a flight school, a big one, and you know who you are, who is teaching pilots this technique, and then they're going to get out in the world and find that it has no place or bearing to any other pilots, except those who are using for flight or learning at that big flight school. So give me your comments on that. I'm happy to hear them. IFR departures also is a very important point, and you might see this later if you're trying to get wings credit, that when you're departing from an uncontrolled airport IFR and you get your release to depart IFR, you are still responsible to ensure that you're clear of VFR traffic. ATC does not make sure that all traffic is clear for you when they give you your IFR release. So just something to keep in mind if you're flying IFR. Some of the top 10, and I have this in here and I have it in the course resources. I don't want to take the time to go through all of them right now. I have a long explanation on each one of these, but obviously they all make sense. They're self-explanatory. Do a thorough pre-brief on the airport. Learn everything you can about a non-towered airport you're flying to if it's not your home airport. Do establish a sterile cockpit and focus on what you're doing within 10 miles of that airport. Try to get the wind picture as early as you can so you can come up with a plan. And if you're using ForeFlight, it's great because if it's hooked up to the internet, or at least before you leave, you can see what's the best runway, what are the winds favoring, and start thinking about that pattern entry well in advance. Try to blend into the existing traffic pattern. If there's a lot of pilots using one runway and two are really optional, two of them are good runways for the wind, try to blend in with the traffic and do your best for that. If there's a problem, communicate with the other pilots, reconcile that problem and work it out. Include the runway and position in every call. So where you are, which runway you're intending to land on in every call. You might see that if you're trying to get wings credit also. So try to remember that that's important. Prioritize visual clearing over the radios. In other words, looking around for airplanes is more important than getting on the radio and talking or looking at your ADS-B in. Look out the window, keep your eyes peeled, keep looking all around, follow the techniques given in, there's an advisory circular on avoiding mid-air collisions, which has a great advice on doing just that. Also, if you are talking to another aircraft in the pattern, I've actually had this happen and I didn't see where they were. Turned out they were not describing accurately where they were, and I thought we were both very much in the same area based on what they were telling me. So I asked them their altitude, make sure you're using this altimeter setting, and I'm going to be at this altitude, you be at that altitude until we see each other. As long as you're at different altitudes, theoretically, you should not hit. Let's see, what's now sense number 7. Use lights and equipment to increase your conspicuity and verify visually. Look for everybody, make sure your lights work, use your lights, stay ahead of the airplane, and use the right configuration and checklist early. Some people say go ugly early. Get dirtied up and get slowed down. Don't fly through the pattern at P51 cruising speeds. And you know who you are. Respect the speed control and spacing for mixed traffic because their high speed, low speed can be in the same pattern and you need to share it. Plan and brief a safe go around and departure path. And again, I have more details on each one of these. I don't want to take the time to do it now. So,
by the way,
yeah,
one point I think is worth mentioning. You've mentioned 2 or 3 times the notion of a sterile cockpit, and no one could argue with that. But I think that a lot of people may not understand what a sterile cockpit is and how you exercise it. It came about as the result of a mid-air collision with an airliner 727 going into Lindbergh Field in San Diego. Everybody in the cockpit was talking and laughing and joking so much that everybody was distracted from the chore at hand, and they weren't looking where they were going, and boom, there was a collision. And the sterile cockpit obviously means there shouldn't be any intra-cockpit communications that aren't necessary for the safety of the flight. People shouldn't be talking so that there's no distraction, and so that these assignments of duties that you have elicited here can be conducted safely and without interruption or distraction. So I think the sterile cockpit is really important, but people have to understand what it means.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I took for granted because it's part of my world at work and yours as well. But a lot of people may not understand what I was referring to. So the difficult part is having your passengers adhere to that when they don't really understand. But I think it's good to pre-brief that also and teach them, tell them, okay, when we're coming in for landing, or when I tell you starting now, let's try to keep the talking to a minimum. Have you ever flown young eagles?
No, that's tough.
Talk about almost impossible to maintain a sterile cockpit. They're just so excited and having so much fun. It's a volunteer EAA program where you fly young kids and get them into aviation, and they're just full of questions, which is fantastic. But it can be very distracting. Yeah. But get your family, if they want to talk a lot, get them looking for traffic. I found that's a great way. Just say, look, there's a lot of airplanes around here, whether there are or not. Get them out looking for traffic. Say that your job here is tell me about any airplanes you see and make sure that we know where they all are. But getting the family and friends and passengers to, keep it a little quiet, even other pilots if you're flying with them during critical times. So, yeah. Anything else? Any other advice on non-towered airport, like your pet peeves that you have before we move on to our technology section?
Yeah, my pet peeve is when people get into discussions during a traffic. They're in the pattern and they start talking to one another.
That happens a lot. And I think that's a worthy point to make, that you shouldn't be talking about your weekend plans, or if you hear a friend on the radio say, hey, what are you doing? You want to meet later? Or blah, blah, blah. I agree. I've heard that it can be very distracting. There could be another pilot trying to get a word in edgewise. Meanwhile, they're barreling down the 45. So try to limit that. I think that's good advice. Also, just using unprofessional verbiage like 10-4 or Roger, good buddy, using CB slang on the aircraft radio, or, saying things like, yeah, I'm going to chop and drop for runway, blah, 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 blah. I hear these things and they're funny and cute, but kind of like meowing on guard. It might be funny, but it's not professional. And yes, I still hear it.
You mean like when you're receiving information whiskey and you shouldn't say you have the booze news? Right.
Or like when you're cleared to taxi via Whiskey Golf at DFW Airport and you call it the John Daly route. There are some things that are fun and funny if you can keep it brief and know your time and place and know your audience. I'm not against enjoying yourself and having fun, but man, keep it brief on a busy CTAF, especially on a weekend with busy traffic in flight schools. A lot of people come from other countries and they're only learning the standard phraseology when they come here, and they're learning the aviation lingo here and don't have all the other things that you might say in their language bank. So be aware of that. So as far as keeping a safe non-towered pattern or uncontrolled airport, what kind of technology do we have in place to help us fly at a non-towered airport? First of all, we have all these apps like ForeFlight, Garmin Pilot, and all of them that can help us become situationally aware. I remember when you taught me to fly, we made our nav log. You had me make a nav log, and I had all the, the true virgins make the company, the true heading, the variation. I'd calculate all that stuff.
They still do, by the way.
They do. I wouldn't know. So up in the top, you had me draw a runway diagram of the airport with my pencil and draw an arrow of how I'll be approaching that airport, like from whatever actual direction. And I would draw this north up and show, but I think you had me draw it like how I'll see the runway as I approach it. So I'm flying track up and draw the runway, because I find with airports that have crossing runways, if they're shaped like an X, it can be very confusing and disorienting to know which runway is which. But the apps that we have now with the moving map, the georeferencing and airport diagrams. So have your airport diagram out, know which way you're coming from, I think is one of the important things. But there are three things, and they're old technology. This is very old school technology, and there's three of them that you should use. And these are the most important pieces of technology to use in the traffic pattern of a non-towered airport: your eyes, your ears, and your mouth. put the iPad in back, put it down, get your cockpit display of traffic information out of your face and look out the window, talk on the radio and listen to what others are saying. This, I say it in jest, but it's really actually true.
Well, this is, you want my pet peeve?
Yeah.
My pet peeve are people who do things while they're taxiing, either at non-towered airports or towered airports. They're always doing things while they're taxiing. They're doing their checklist, checking their controls, doing all kinds of things. And most taxi accidents that do occur as a result of that. And I can't stand it when pilots do things when they're taxiing, when that's all they should be doing is taxiing.
I remember specifically, and I have the welts on my head to prove it afterwards, when I would do things while I was taxiing while you were teaching me to fly. Because in the Citabria with you and back, if I started distracting myself, you'd whack me on the head. I remember specifically, wait till you stop in the run-up area. Do that in the run-up area. Get your eyes outside. Head on a swivel. All those things still go through my head. It's fantastic advice. And we have flight schools right now that are so Hobbs conscious, and they're so busy. I don't want to call them pilot mills because that's not fair to say, but they are moving a lot of pilots through in a very short period of time, and they are doing a lot while they're taxiing. I'll fly with people that have just come out of one of these schools, and UND, which will remain nameless, pilots come to me and they're coming for a flight review, and they're doing all their pre-flight checks while they're taxiing out. And I think they teach them to do that in the interest of saving time, because when they have 100 airplanes dispatched to go do their lessons at such and such a time, I understand what happens in the run-up area, and they got to keep the flow going. But you're absolutely right. Don't be distracted in the cockpit when you're taxiing. Likewise, when you're making your call, when you're about to enter a runway, and the traffic pattern is behind you as you enter the runway, you should turn a 360 if you have room and look at the pattern. There are a lot of J3 Cub pilots out there and Aranca pilots out there at those airports who don't have electrical systems and very likely don't have radios. And I'd like to give a shout out to those pilots who are depending on visually seeing you and you visually seeing them, because you don't have to talk on the radio. Just because you have it, it's a luxury that you shouldn't take advantage of. Or don't take for granted, I should say. Do take advantage of it, but don't take it for granted that everybody has a radio. So I remember that being your pet peeve. The intersecting runways should raise an inner red flag anytime you have crossing runways. This should just scare you to start with, and scare you not enough to not go flying, but scare you enough to mitigate the risk. So be very communicative. Make sure you know what's happening. Look at the traffic on the runway. Look at the traffic that could be approaching the runway. Certainly, I would never take off on a crossing runway if I have radios without saying anything. So keep that in mind. This ground track in the middle of this diagram is actually the ground track of the two aircraft in the accident that we're talking about. The King Air is the red on takeoff, as you can see that he taxied out. And then the green is the Beech 1900 on landing. And you can see at the very end, they both swerved and eventually collided. It's interesting that the King Air swerved right, which was aiming for ahead of the Beech 1900, and the Beech 1900 swerved left, which is ahead of the King Air. I'm just wondering if that's a second nature thing to do, to go ahead of. I'd like to think I would have turned behind traffic that I'm crossing, conflicting with. I don't know. Who had the right of way here? Well, it's a sad accident. I don't mean to joke about it, but obviously, do aircraft landing have right of way over aircraft taking off?
They should.
They should. Aircraft on final does have the right of way over all other aircraft. They should give way, but this one is a very sad result of a pilot who took off without saying a word after just being in the middle of a very non-sterile situation, talking to his student right before they took off. So, do you have any other pet peeves before we get to our game show?
No.
I'm afraid to ask because I know you have more.
I do.
Yeah, we all do. Just ask anybody what their pet peeves are. We should have a show that's just strictly pet peeves. It would be a good one, actually.
That'd be fun.
It would be. All right, let's take a look at our game show. We'll play our game. If you're not in real time, by this point, if you're only a few minutes behind, fast forward through the instructions if you want to be in real time. The prizes we've got one autographed copy of Test Pilot, 1001 Things You Thought You Knew About Aviation from my favorite flight instructor, which is where most of our questions originate. So if you actually buy that book, you'll get a head start on these questions. If you buy that book and read it in advance of each show, then you're going to know the questions we're going to ask. You can answer and actually win prizes on future episodes.
We're giving one away, though.
We are.
Yeah.
We're giving one away tonight. That one will be autographed. We got a Shift Show shirt, which you can see we're both proudly boasting, and 3 Shift Show coffee mugs. ASA has sported for a free Far Aim book as a prize, 1 per month. So we got 12 of those. And then 2 of your choice courses, free courses from the Pilot Institute, which is a fantastic training program. And you will go on there and choose which one you want, private, instrument. They've got a lot of great drone courses if you want to get into UAS as well. The first place winner will have their first pick of these choices. The second will have the second choice, and so on. So on with the game show. The instructions, if you want to open the app, you have to play on your mobile phone. If you're watching this on your mobile phone, a little disadvantage, but you'll be directed to the game show site. Enter your name and your email address, and you can enter your first name or last initial or nickname, whatever you want, to remain anonymous if you want. It's the website is theschiffshow.tv/game show. You might be asked to verify the email address, but that's for your safety and just for security. When you're ready, go ahead and click on the start and get ready to test your knowledge. The questions will pop up as we start talking through them here shortly. Read the question, select your answer, select the green, and then click on the green send button if you're confident. You can also change your answer anytime before you hit the send button before the time is up, so watch the timer. But remember, the faster you answer and submit it, the more points you get if you get that question right.
These are all questions from my book?
Most of them are. Tonight we have a couple that are not. You'll see the results after you answer, and if you're the number one, you can be proud of yourself and you'll see it. All the results, hang on, these are automatic, and they're, hang on, I'm going to go back. These are timed, so I got to keep going. And then you can ask.
Okay.
I just started it over again. That's all right. You give everybody more time. But I'll just click through here to the, no, we missed it. The last one was, I forgot what the last one was. It's an automated video that plays there. So in any event, what were you going to ask?
I was going to ask if there were questions from my book, if I could take the quiz.
Oh, you sure you can? Yeah. Because you're here, 2 of them are not from your book. So in any event, most of them come from you, the 2026 Hoover Award recipient, the master of being full of Schiff, and this show is twice as full of Schiff as most of them with you on board, so I appreciate that. All right, let's get to it. Question number 1. The black box on an airliner is usually what color? And you might think this is obvious. It's like who's buried in Grant's tomb, but not necessarily. Is it black, silver, orange, or yellow? The black box on an airliner, and they call it a black box. It's an interesting question. So see that I don't have a picture of your book on this slide. That means this question did not come from your book. So if it's embarrassing that it's so simple, you would never have put a question like this in your book. But, all right, everybody to reveal the answer? I think we've got everybody should be answered by now. And if you haven't figured it out, I do have to stall a little bit to get everybody time to answer the question. So you can comment and help me stall on any of these. The answer, the black box on an airliner is usually what color? You might think it's black is how it got its name, but it's not. It's actually orange. And sometimes you see it on TV when they show it in an accident, but why is it black? Do you know why?
Why is it called black?
I'm sorry, why is it called a black box if it's orange?
Because all of the avionics boxes on an airplane are black, generally, or they used to be.
But this one's orange.
I know.
Why?
Easier to find.
Yeah, in the wreckage. Exactly. All right. And I think they used to be black. Wikipedia said that they were called black boxes back when secret wartime electronics lived in black sealed housings. I don't know if that's true for Wikipedia or not, but and the name stuck, even though after investigators started painting them orange, like you said, to make them easier to find in wreckage. So, question 2. What is the main purpose of the small breather hole at the bottom of a passenger window on an airliner? I should have said here. On an airliner, you're sitting in your seat, you're looking out your window, down at the bottom, you'll see a little teeny pinhole. What is the purpose of that hole at the bottom of your window? And maybe it was a bonus. Does it go all the way through to the outside? I'll tell you, no, it doesn't. Is it to let fresh air in the cabin? Is it to drain the rainwater out if rainwater gets in the window panes, in between the window panes? Is it to hide a tiny camera? There's a tiny camera in there so we in the cockpit can look at everybody in each row. Make
It's
sure
a really tiny camera.
it would be a tiny camera, but they have those now. And so we can't push back until your seat backs are up and your tray tables are stowed. This is how we know. I did a funny story while everybody's answering this question. I got an email, a printout from my dispatcher, one flight that said, have your flight attendants check on the situation in row 23. And I thought, oh my gosh, what the heck? I thought maybe we did have cameras. What on earth are they talking about? So I called the flight attendant. I said, I don't know what this is all about, but I got a message from dispatch saying, check the situation, row 23. She goes, what? I said, I don't know, just go look. She called me back and said, we got it all worked out. The problem is solved. And I said, what is that about? And she said, there were people fighting in that row, the right side of the airplane, and the people on the left side were actually videoing it and live streaming it to Twitter or posting pictures on Twitter. And in our dispatch, we have a social media department who's constantly monitoring for anything like that. And they had actually seen it on Twitter, sent a message to us in the airplane to stop what was going on. I thought that was amazing. Something that you probably didn't see on the Connie. The answer is for that little small breather hole. It's actually to equalize pressure between their two window panes there. And that hole is to equalize the pressure between them. Because otherwise, if you had a sealed air in there, that would constantly be changing pressure and your window would blow up like a balloon. All right, question number 3. What World War II pilot? Now, you'll notice that the picture of your book is on this page. So any complaints about this question, you know who to direct them to. What World War II pilot with the now famous name took off from the aircraft carrier Lexington in his Grumman Wildcat and shot down 5 Japanese bombers in less than 5 minutes? Now famous World War II pilot. Famous name. All those names are famous. Jimmy Doolittle, Lieutenant Edward Butch O'Hare, Brigadier General Chuck Yeager, or Captain Eddie Rickenbacker? You know the answer, or are you looking at it right now? You looking it up?
No, I know.
You wrote it. I think you do know.
I do know. But you'd be surprised. I've written almost 4,000 questions
Oh my
for
God.
the quiz test pilot, and I can't remember all the answers. Impossible.
I wouldn't think so. Yeah, the book is only the first 1,001. When are the next 4 books coming out?
Yeah, right.
I would love to see them. We need to memorialize them, though.
True, I agree.
So which World War II pilot with a now famous name took off from the aircraft carrier Lexington and got 5 Japanese bombers in less than 5 minutes? Impressively, it was Lieutenant Edward Butch O'Hare. And why is that name familiar? Well, you've heard of O'Hare Airport in Chicago, Chicago's O'Hare. And that airport is named after him. Incidentally, the airport identifier, ORD, originates from the airport's original name, Orchard Place Airport Douglas Field. Orchard Place Airport Douglas Field, ORD, which was located on the site of a wartime aircraft assembly plant. And the code was retained when the airport was renamed in 1949 to honor World War II pilot Edward Butch O'Hare. So why isn't it EBO? I guess they kept the name. All right. Any more on that?
EDO was Edo Floats.
Edo Float. EBO. Edward Butch.
EDO, yeah.
Butch O'Hare. Question number 4 of 5. Lindbergh's historic flight from New York to Paris originated at Roosevelt Field on Long Island. Today, this parcel of land is what? It's still an airport, a housing tract, an industrial complex, or a shopping mall. What is the parcel of land where Lindbergh took off on his historic flight from New York to Paris? What is that parcel of land right now? It's either an airport, an industrial complex, a housing tract, or a shopping mall. Have you ever been to that airport? Yeah, we don't want to give away the answer. I actually have been to this parcel of land.
So have I.
And if memory serves, when I was there, I bought myself a jacket or a shirt because it is now a shopping mall. So now it's a shopping mall. Roosevelt Field Mall is in Garden City, New York. And here is where it is. You can find New York on this map.
What is his destination? What is that parcel of land now?
Ooh, bonus question. Yeah, there's the mall, Roosevelt Field Mall. That's what it's called.
He went into Le Bourget. What is it now?
Le Bourget, still?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So that one stayed an airport. Only in the U.S. do we close airports and put in malls. All right, last question. The buffeting felt by a pilot during a stall entry in most light planes is the result of burbling air coming from the wing striking the tail. True or false? When you feel that buffeting and when you're entering a stall, the buffeting is coming from burbling air from the wing striking your tail. True or false? You ever looked up the word burbling?
No.
I tried.
You ever watch a pot of water burble?
A pot of water burble. Isn't that boiling?
Oh. Just taking time.
When I'm older, I'm going to be burbling a lot more than I do now, probably. If it's hereditary, at least. So is it true or false? What causes the buffeting when you stall an airplane? That buffet that you feel. I remember doing test flights in the 1011, and we'd take it for a stall. We'd take it into a deep stall, and it would buffet. And the buffet was like up and down 2 feet or a foot. It felt like it was a pretty aggressive buffet, and not a Jimmy Buffett. So what is causing that buffet? Is it the burbling air coming off the top of the wing striking the tail? The answer is true. It is. It's turbulent air from above the stalled portion of the wing striking the tail. And this usually, the usual cause of the stall buffet, the wing doesn't buffet itself, the tail does. So when enough of the wing stalls, insufficient downwash remains also to keep the tail down. This, in addition to air striking the bottom of the stabilizer at large angles of attack, causes the tail to rise. And as a result, in that stall situation, in many airplanes, the nose drops. And this is a drawing. No, this is of from your Proficient Pilot book where it explains that. So, all right, well, that is it for the quiz. We'll see. I hope you guys did well. Again, and tomorrow or the next day when I publish the follow-up email, you'll see how you ranked if you participated on your phones and live, and we'll get the prizes out to the winners. I like to end each episode with a quote. The airport runway is the most important main street in any town, said by Norman Crabtree. By the way, do you know what the most common name of a street is? I just saw this on the Big Bang Theory repeat I was watching last night.
Maine.
You'd think it was Maine because this question, but no, it's a number. And you'd think it would be First Street, but it's not. It's Second Street. The reason 2nd Street is the most popular numbered street, actually, is because 1st Street is always turned into Main Street. So, street trivia. Anyway, any more gems of wisdom before we salute everybody? Good night.
I just hope everyone should fly safely.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line. And there's a place, time and place to have fun. But man, when you get closer you get to an airport, take this stuff seriously. I would love to get to a zero accident industry, but I just don't know if we'll ever get there. But do your best. Just remember that one is always lurking around the corner, and do your best to avoid it. So, Dad, thanks again for joining tonight. I appreciate you taking the time and the contributions that you're always given and everything that you teach all of us.
I think you're doing a nice job of this program, and I hope to see you again soon on it.
You will next month. You'll see me at your house next week.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night. The Schiff Show is made possible by our sponsor of EMCO, and they are known for reasonable premiums. I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart for contributing enough to fund the production of this show, and I break even on this. I love doing it. I'm at a phase where I give back, but EMCO makes it possible, and they also insure my airplane, and I've been working with them since we've had an airplane. They're great to deal with. The wonderful people. You be honest with them, and they help you quite a bit. Tell them that you watch the Schiff Show, and you'll get a discount as well. We'll see you next month on May 14th, the second Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. Central Time on theschiffshow.tv. And if you haven't broken the code, the episodes are theschiffshow.tv/1/2/3. This one being theschiffshow.tv/16, because it's our 16th episode. But always just go to schiffshow.tv to get to our website. I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this. I hope you got something out of it. Be sure to look at the course resources, because you could get more wings credit and an elaboration on almost everything we talked about and more. The show will be a little bit longer starting next month, so that I don't feel so rushed and I can get a little bit more content out there with it, and subsequently will be worth more wings credit. So join us on May 14th, and we will see you then. So for now, good night, everyone.